Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Are you one of the millions that maybe have a hard time falling asleep, or maybe you fall asleep fine, but then you're waking up staring at the ceiling between 2 and 4 in the middle of the night, and you don't know, should you grab your phone, should you read a book, or should you just stare at the ceiling? Well, we're going to get into sleep, and I talk a lot about diet and exercise and all the other things, but if you're not sleeping, that's it. Nothing else matters. So welcome to Accelerated Health with Sara Banta, the show where we cut through the noise, fast track your journey to real lasting health. I'm your host, Sara, certified nutritionist and founder of Accelerated Health Products. Every week, I share science-backed supplements, detox strategies, and wellness tools that actually work so you can boost your energy, balance your hormones, and sleep. And I'm super excited. We've got Dr. Marie Morse. She's a double board certified neurologist and sleep medicine specialist, educator, author, and founder of Damn Good Sleep. Welcome, Dr. Marie. I'm so excited for you to be here. This topic is affecting everybody. And I've got my Oura Ring. I even have my Hume band. Both of them tell me what my sleep scores are. And actually, sometimes they don't agree, which is another whole nother story. But absolutely. I'm obsessed with my sleep. And I was just telling you offline, I went on vacation for a week and my sleep score was in the 90s when normally it's in the 80s. And I was unplugged. I was away from the Wi-Fi. I was relaxed. I wasn't having 1,000 things going in my mind on what I had to do. And as women, especially women over 40, we have all of these other factors that are affecting our sleep. So I'm super excited to dive into this topic. So maybe we can start with your journey and what brought you to where you are today and focusing on such an important topic.
Thank you. And I am so excited to be able to sit with someone who shares my enthusiasm for sleep. And I always like to tell people it's not that I'm such a fanatic for sleep. I'm a fanatic for the values that sleep bring and really utilizing that as a barometer for overall health and wellness. So this, I think, is going to be a very exciting conversation that I think is going to be jam-packed with lots of good tips, tricks. And no, I'm not going to give you hacks because sleeping well is not a part of achieving a hack. It is a part of achieving a specific lifestyle that is going to allow for you to get those sound sleep. So for me, I will tell you, I am a culprit of that hustle mentality from the time I was a young person. Suffering with ADHD, my mind always moving in a million places. I was that kid that had difficulties falling and staying asleep. However, never realized anything about it. And when I went into medicine, had no plans on pursuing a career in sleep medicine. My primary interest was going into neurology. And the reason why is as a young child, my mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. However, in my journey of becoming a neurologist and specifically a neurologist with special training in child neurology, I started to realize a very common theme. Everyone had a sleep problem. And sometimes it's a transient thing and sometimes it's more chronic, but in people living with neurologic disorders, the sleep was that sign that there was a brain dysfunction, there was a neurologic dysfunction, because sleep is a neurologic process. So I went into sleep medicine really with the plans of not trying to describe a comorbidity of something that was co-occurring with their neurologic disorder, but really to use it as something that I would be able to better diagnose, prognose, and also therapeutically intervene for neurologic disorders. Where I've ended up, however, is really been a very fortunate experience of becoming a recognized expert in the field in really helping others to achieve better overall health and wellness by owning all 24 hours and being able to use sleep as a tool to better understand what their lived experience is.
It's amazing. You think about sleep like, okay, I wake up and I have less energy for my workout, or I'm tired throughout the day. But no one really thinks about the neurological part as far as, is it affecting my brain fog today? Or is it affecting my risk for Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or dementia or these other long-term diseases that people are more looking at genetics or diet or other things where maybe the cornerstone is sleep. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, I think that what you see from a societal perspective of we really kind of embrace this mentality, I'll sleep when I'm dead, which very frequently I respond, well, you're just going to get there a lot sooner, is the fact that in medicine, we have made this arbitrary divide between day and night and have reinforced to everyone that the only thing we want to ask about or hear about is what your symptoms are during the day. And did you get better during the day? And so we've made this artificial divide. And really, this is reflective of historical context of if you go back to 400 BC, where there was the first descriptions around sleep, it was viewed as a temporary coma, as something that was optional, as when your body just shut down, not as something that was a neurologically active process that was resulting in restorative benefits, stabilizing benefits, influencing our endocrinology or our hormone status. And so with that, we are only seeing that that really is starting to take full circle now, as the field of sleep medicine only was established in the 1970s. And so we're a young field that is moving fast to really try to create the partnerships with not only people who are trying to achieve optimal health and wellness, but medical professionals who very frequently are neglecting to ask the questions about how are you sleeping?
Yeah. Before we get into that, I put this connection to my parents are in the 80s. My dad does not sleep. He's been constantly on the Tylenol PM, the Advil PM, the Benadryl, then the medical medicine from the doctor. And oh, by the way, this is going to cause acid reflux. And now I'm taking acid reflux medication, all of which I say, Dad, don't do. He never listens to me. That's a whole nother story. But in that, at their age group, I've noticed the most successful men, especially, just because they're of that generation, they're the ones going to work, and really the type A personalities, the CEOs, all of those guys that were super successful, probably working a lot more hours, probably sacrificing their sleep. They're the ones with Alzheimer's. They're the ones that are dying off quicker, and there's got to be a connection there, right?
Absolutely. And we're now starting to better understand the science related to that. So one of the first things that I always like to emphasize to people is that there are two major processes that we always want to think about when we're talking about sleep. And that's your sleep, going to actual sleep, but also your circadian experience. This is your day-night experience, that near 24-hour rhythm that we experience that kind of coincides with when the sun is going up and when it's going down. And these are processes that have both independent factors that we cannot control occurring, as well as the behavior influence that now are causing a misalignment between the two. Whenever we are functioning in misalignment with what our body is expecting, it's not going to result in something good. I always use the analogy for my guys of if I was driving my car in malalignment, I'm going to be able to do it for a while. It's going to take me from point A to point B. I might realize I'm veering over to the right. I'm veering over to right. But when my axle breaks, because of that malalignment for so long, I'm going to realize the detriment it really is doing. And this is the same thing that we're seeing with health. When we are trying to function in malalignment from what our body needs and expects, we see disease crop up. It's not only the Alzheimer's disease, it also is including your risk for things like Parkinson's disease. It's increasing your risk for cardiometabolic disorders, high blood pressure, diabetes, a heart attack, a stroke, obesity. And if you're already living with those conditions, it is only going to make it harder to be able to control.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting if you talk about weight gain, because a lot of people listening struggle with weight gain, and they don't realize that sleep, not the calories they're eating, could be affecting the hormones that cause the weight gain and the fat storage. And it's not just about going to the gym for 4 hours and restricting your calories, cutting out the bad foods, whatever it is. You have to get that sleep as the cornerstone of your health. So it's super easy. Okay, everybody go sleep 8 hours, 9 hours, whatever you're supposed to sleep. But then you have anxiety over not sleeping. So then there's this whole, okay, it's time to go to bed. I'm really nervous. I'm anxious. And then that causes your mind to go. And then that disrupts your sleep even more. So I want to get into first, what is causing the disrupted sleep? What are the biggest things that you see? And then also, what are the tools to get things back in alignment? Because like I said, easier said than done.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the biggest challenges that many people who are struggling with their sleep experience, the kind of misinformation from their clinicians of, I'm struggling with sleep, and they get told sleep hygiene. And the thing about sleep hygiene of, oh, well, make sure you have a bedtime and do all of the things, no cell phones, all of that. Sleep hygiene alone has never, ever, 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 ever been shown to actually fix a sleep problem. And the analogy I use to help people really reinforce, they go, well, that doesn't make sense. We should be doing those things. Well, if I went to my dentist and I had a cavity, they wouldn't send me away and say, brush your teeth more. They would first drill a hole, fill it, do the intervention, and then tell me, brush your teeth more. Sleep hygiene is supposed to be a part of the interventions for whatever the problem that may exist. And the reason I start off with that as a response to your question is because when we're looking at sleep disorders, the International Classification of Sleep Disorders, Edition 3 Text Revision, which is our current manual, identifies over 70 different sleep disorders that can possibly exist. So first and foremost, recognize that we should never take a one-size-fits-all approach, that reasons for your difficulty to be able to fall asleep, stay asleep, feel refreshed, have sleepiness during the day may be very distinct from someone else who may have very similar symptoms. And so the way to best own what your own journey will look like is really characterizing for yourself first, what am I struggling with? If you go to your clinician or your healthcare partner to say, I'm not sleeping well, they're going to give you a one-size-fits-all response, like sleep hygiene. If you go in and you're describing, I'm having difficulties falling asleep, they're going to then ask the questions, well, tell me about what's going on. The things you've described are very commonly encountered as a reason for people to have sleep initiation insomnia, is that I know I need more sleep. I know I have a lot of things I need to get done during the day. I have to be in my best position in the day in order to get more done. And therefore, I start to ruminate about what are the consequences if I don't fall asleep right now. And I start doing that mental math of making the calculations. If I fall asleep right the second, this is how many hours of sleep. And now I start generating that anxiety. And so in those types of situations, we want to really identify that as the culprit, and very frequently are going to use strategies such as cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia to help in redirecting those behaviors to things that are less maladaptive and more adaptive to that issue. It is important to also know that depending on the age of the individual, we may see different things that are contributing to why we're having difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep or being restless. I know one of the things that you and I had discussed is a lot of the people who are listening or are tuning into this podcast are women, and they're women who are probably close to our age who are experiencing those perimenopausal and menopausal changes, which are already dysfunctional enough. And recognizing when women are asked if they're familiar what these symptoms are or when they're occurring, more than 50% of women don't even know what phase they're in. So there already is this call to action of, I need to better understand what my body is experiencing. You then layer in the fact that it not only disrupts your entire day, but it then wreaks havoc on your night. And so many times we're trying to address the daytime without realizing those nighttime symptoms are part of the reason as to why you're having a dysfunction, but they're all being based in that hormonal dysfunction.
So can you dive into that a little deeper? What, going through perimenopause and menopause, how are those hormonal changes shifting the sleep? I know for me, with my Oura ring and my Hue, I see my body temperature rise. And I didn't know that it was doing that until I started tracking it. And I noticed that that is when I wake up and I get very thirsty. I need some cold water to cool my body down. And then I'm able to fall back asleep. Thank goodness. Not a lot of people can fall back asleep. But what are these hormones actually doing during the night and in the way that they are disrupting our sleep?
Sure. I had alluded to earlier that sleep is a neurologic process, and it is one that has a very significant role in our neuroendocrine axis. That means my brain, hormone axis. The thing that many people don't realize is our hormones like estrogen and progesterone are very, very active in the central nervous system and have a huge influence in even how certain receptors are expressed in the brain. When we look at the failure of this interaction related to perimenopause and menopause, what starts to develop are the difficulties in being able to fall asleep, stay asleep, the difficulties in our cognitive performance, which are only worsened by those sleep issues. Estrogen and progesterone are going to influence how we cycle through our sleep. So we're supposed to do that non-REM 1, non-REM 2, non-REM 3, or our deepest stage of sleep, which is non-REM 3 or slow wave sleep, and REM sleep. And we're supposed to have a specific pattern throughout the night. As we go through these changes, we start to see that cycling starts to change. We also see, which is very unique for women, is as we enter into menopause, because of these drops in these hormones, it also impacts our muscle tone. So similar to how we see our body's muscle tone change with time, our upper airway tone changes with time.
Wow.
And women going through menopause are actually much more at risk of developing obstructive sleep apnea. However, they may not look like what most people think obstructive sleep apnea looks like, because we've painted this picture that it's generally men who are overweight with big, large neck. But unfortunately, the women who are very highly susceptible look like you and me. Narrow faces, slim builds. However, our airway is nice and floppy and therefore collapsing and more likely to collapse during our REM stage of sleep. So what do we tend to look like? We tend to look like women who wake up earlier than desired, that 2 to 5 a.m., can't fall back to sleep, dissatisfied with our sleep. We tell our doctor and they tell us we have insomnia. We're complaining about our mood or our brain fog or our irritability. And we're told that, don't worry, that's normal. No, it's common. It's never normal. And it really is a matter of how do we address identifying the right problem and creating the right solution to really be able to power you through your day and your night.
Okay, so normal is not always good. And so I don't want to use that word, but what I've noticed is my children have a lot longer period of REM and deep sleep than I do. Is that optimal for me to see a lower number, or is that just common and not optimal?
So what you are referencing is something that I think is so important. When you're talking about brain health, there is a normal, what we call ontogeny, meaning pattern over time. When I'm a little baby, what I do is very different from what I do at 5 versus 15 versus 50. So the ultradian cycling, meaning how we cycle through sleep at night, actually changes between our adolescence, adulthood to older adulthood. So the fact that they spend more time in slow wave sleep compared to you is absolutely expected and is a healthy pattern to see, and something that is an expected pattern that you would see as you become older.
So let's take the two camps, because what I see is there's a camp of people that can't fall asleep. And then there's the camp of people that wake up between 2 and 5 a.m. And I see a lot that is attached to liver health or blood sugar, that waking up in the middle of the night, or that 2 to 5 a.m. But what do you see as the common denominators for the people that can't fall asleep versus the ones that wake up in the middle of the night?
Yeah, sure. And I love that you've made that comparison. One of my close friends, Dr. Michael Perlis, who's like the godfather of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, always says there's sleep initiation insomnia and sleep maintenance insomnia. He goes, when you see sleep initiation, it's generally behaviorally driven. When you see sleep maintenance, always think medical. And with that, it is not just the diabetes or the reflux or the medical in that regard, but it's also the obstructive sleep apneas, the restless leg syndrome, etc. In regards to a common denominator, I would say that one isn't better than the other, because either of them are going to cause a dysfunction and a problem of what your day will look like, as well as what your night is going to look like. And so really robbing you of the opportunity to do the restoration, to do the brain kind of powering down, to be able to store all the new memories, as well as doing some of that health maintenance. What I would also say is that in either capacity, even though I had alluded to the fact that my friend had said the falling asleep is the behavioral piece and not being able to stay asleep is medical, behaviors are necessary to address on both regards, because you had even shared you are fortunate to be able to fall back to sleep, but there are many who can't. And many times that's behaviorally driven because we're expecting the rest of the night to be a really poor night of sleep.
Right. Where does diet come into this?
Diet has been shown to now be one of the most critical things that have a bidirectional relationship with our sleep and circadian health. And so what I mean by that is it's not only the quantity of food, it is the quality of food and the timing of food that can greatly influence what your sleep and circadian health look like. This is so true that there's even been studies that have looked at the timing of your eating as a strategy to battle jet lag. Because of the fact that if I can adopt the feeding schedule as to the time zone I'm going to, I am going to adjust to that time zone more quickly. And I use that as an example because I think it's very powerful for anyone who's ever experienced jet lag. It's horrible. And many people are reaching for medications. If I can utilize food, that's wonderful. What we do know is that when we're talking about sleep, when we are sleep deprived or we're having sleep dysfunction, it actually creates a significant dysfunction in our hormonal system. So things like leptin and ghrelin, where they're going to be dysfunctional in making us have more food-seeking behavior, feel less full, so wanting to overeat, and then also choose foods that are not as nutritious as what we normally would. This then is going to result in our body not feeling all its best. And if we're doing that too close to bedtime, there then is the secondary consequence of your body now having all this food sitting in its stomach, increasing likelihood for reflux, worsening things like obstructive sleep apnea. There even is some suggestion that it can impact what our dream content is. And when we're having those very high fat, spicy type of meals, those can actually create a higher likelihood for experiencing things like nightmare disorder. So our food and our diet, it is something that we really do want to pay attention to, and that is not even tapping into the conversation around the microbiome and how our diets are going to influence that, and how the microbiome also influences our sleep.
So this is really interesting. My girlfriends who, whether they're divorced and living on their own or just they don't have a husband that needs to eat at the exact same time they do, they choose to eat around 4:00 as their last meal, which would be ideal for me. But I have two boys in the house that say absolutely not. And I notice during the winter months after the time change, when it's darker early, but we're still eating at 5:30, which tends to be on the earlier side, I have worse sleep than when it is daylight savings and the sun's still out at that same hour, and I'm able to sleep better. So there's even the sun, and when the sun goes down, though, when the sun comes up, affects your sleep and your circadian rhythms. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so when we look at over the course of the calendar year, and we're seeing that even if you didn't have the actual time changes, where we're artificially changing the hour, which greatly impacts how we're doing overall. We do see patterns change. We do see that we tend to sleep longer and require the feeling of having longer sleep duration in those winter months. And so when we're trying to achieve that same pattern that we have in the spring and summer months, it feels inadequate because our body is yearning for more of that. It also is going to, because of the darker light exposure, it also is going to miscue our brain as to what we should be doing when. So when we're trying to do the same activities year round, it becomes more challenging because our environmental cues are changing and our brain is trying to respond to it and is going, wait a minute, it's dark out. Shouldn't you be getting ready for bed? Why are you eating dinner right now?
Right. I mean, it makes total sense. And then when you are using artificial light, that probably affects the brain in a different way and completely confuses your body and your circadian rhythms. It only makes sense. And that's why I say that all of my friends that are actually into their health prioritize their sleep, they're eating earlier, and also the walk after the meal. I noticed that over the last week, I didn't necessarily have my sweet treat or my fruit after dinner or whatever. And so I was not eating as much sugar after late at night. My sleep was better. And then I came home and I went straight back to my normal habits and my sleep got disrupted. Now, I also, of course, was getting back into the swing of normal life. So there's that as well. Walking after meals, though, has been huge. Even if it's 10 minutes, just up and down the street, strolling, that has been a huge game changer for my sleep, for my blood sugar, for my heart rate variability, and the sleep quality. So let's talk about some of the, I know you don't necessarily, you want to address the neurological part first, but are there hacks that people should do day one?
So I think day one, the biggest thing to do is really get a better understanding of what are you doing on a day-to-day basis. What I find is that we are many times in such a rush to get so much done in a day that we sometimes are utilizing our time inappropriately. So it is a very funny thing. I've done a lot of work with school systems around sleep health and achieving better academic performance, athletic performance. I've done the same thing in the work environment. And when I come in and I do a session on, we're going to talk about time management, they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Aren't you a sleep doctor? Why are you talking to us about time management? Because there's a bi-directional relationship. And so by understanding how you're utilizing all the hours of your day, we now can also start to understand how can we strategize around what is your best first step. And so many times we see that people are trying to Google it. It's one of the most commonly Googled things, right? We see that the sleep industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry now because over $120 million a year is being spent on over-the-counter sleep aids. And I'm going to change my mattress. I'm going to change my pillow. I'm going to change everything, but not necessarily my habits or look at what's going on. So I would say the very first thing I always encourage people to do on day one is do your own self-evaluation. Self-awareness is the most critical element, foundational element of you owning your journey in your health. Day two, now that you know what your struggle is or what your pattern is, if it's the person who you said is having difficulty in being able to fall asleep and have recognized that the reason for that is they get into bed even though they feel very sleepy and they're ruminating and they're thinking about either all the things they have to do tomorrow or did they get all the things done today, is take that pattern of behavior and schedule it for earlier in the day. This is the reason why the time management becomes important, is because if I know that I've taken 20 minutes at 4 o'clock today and I've gone over what are all the things I need to accomplish today. Okay, I got those all done. What are the things I'm planning for tomorrow? I now, when I start going into that rumination as I'm trying to go to sleep, I can reassure myself, we already took care of that. So you're now removing that. You then can replace it with a behavior that is going to be something that is going to be more aligned with being able to fall asleep.
That makes sense. I mean, I do my power work in the morning on my organization, and then later in the afternoon, it's more of the fun, creative stuff, the less pressure, less stress, and there's room for a walk out with my dogs or a conversation with a family member or a friend or whatever. And it's more relaxed, kind of coming down with that same cortisol swing during the day as well. So I like to take advantage of that cortisol boost in the morning for my workouts and for my real brain power. And then as far as food goes, we talked about when you want to stop eating. Is there something to when you start eating, people that are intermittent fasting versus eating right as they wake up?
Sure. There definitely is data to give a suggestion. It's a growing body of data around time-restricted eating. And this is kind of similar to why the whole jet lag approach works. So I do think that there is the need to always individualize what it is that is expected of you. And then also what is your pattern of behaviors. It sounds like you and I are probably similar of that. We tend to be more of the morning birds, right? Those morning larks. And so with that stated, we tend to be our highest productivity and our brains are on kind of fire to be able to get things done. I have plenty of colleagues who they're kind of more of that afternoon to evening. Asking them to do that high intensity work early in the day is probably not going to be very successful. With that stated, we do want to look at the timing of the food and what kind of food we're eating and utilizing that to power us when we need to be at that highest activity. For me, I generally would encourage people to try and have their breakfast or some sort of small snack not too long after they wake up in order for them to be able to already start fueling their day with some good carbs to be able to help them sustain, and then being able to kind of look at the course of the day and be able to manufacture what kind of diet is going to help me to prevent me from having those kind of dips in the afternoon where I'm having that carb overload and I'm really crashing, I'm reaching for the extra coffee, and really trying to maintain it so that they're able to kind of have a better day across the day.
And it's so bidirectional, because if you are off track and you're eating those carbs and the caffeine in the afternoon, that's only going to disrupt your sleep. And then your disrupted sleep is going to make you reach for those things the next day. I want to talk about the sleep aids and melatonin, and then things is more serious like Ambien. Mm-hmm. How is that? Is that giving you real good sleep? Are they addictive? Is it, hardcore? Don't use them whatsoever? Where do you see those sleep aids?
Sure. So I think when you're looking at the over-the-counter sleep aids, so things in the United States that are over-the-counter are going to include things like your melatonin. We now are also seeing a variety of other nutritional supplements, whether it's tart cherry juice or utilizing your tryptophans and some of these other pieces to things that are going to be more like you had said, your dad with Benadryl and diphenhydramine, which is the component in Benadryl, is in a lot of over-the-counter sleep aids. Those I'm always telling people avoid at all cost. We know that number one, those are ones that you develop tolerance, you need escalating dosing, and it can even result in overdose. We also know that that's a risk factor later on of developing Alzheimer's, is utilizing those medications. Melatonin, if you spoke with me 5 years ago, I'd say, oh, we're using way too much melatonin. We're seeing that people are even calling poison control for taking too much. I've taken a huge swing in the opposite direction in regards to melatonin utilization. The biggest caution I say is melatonin doesn't fix all the problems, it fixes some problems. However, the dosing around it, we're now seeing expanding depending on the indication, because we're now seeing it being used in things like cancer and in heart health, etc. And that's because melatonin does more than sleep weight control. It also has significant anti-inflammatory properties. And so with that, I always tell people, if you're utilizing something chronically like melatonin, make sure you're discussing it with your clinician. In regards to prescription sleep aids, these are ones that we don't take lightly. When utilizing, when thinking about how we use medications for people who have difficulty with falling asleep or have things like insomnia, we generally are trying to avoid utilizing medications and really focusing on the behaviors first. However, when we do utilize them, it is always with an abundance of caution. There's everything from the medications that you described, which are controlled substances that, again, we're really trying to minimize the use of. These are ones where people do develop tolerance to them. They do have the risk of potentially having addictive properties to them. And you also can end up needing escalating doses or them not working long term. We, however, are seeing other medications that are being developed, things like our dual orexin receptor antagonists, where those are looking more favorable in regards to not having addictive properties and that you can use them nightly on a night-to-night basis and have a very different way that they work. There's other medications that are used off-label, very commonly antidepressant family of medications. And this really is, I think, where there does need to be the tailoring to the individual, because sometimes it can achieve more benefit than just a singular problem.
And are these medications actually achieving the good quality sleep, or is it just kind of putting you out and making you feel like you are sleeping?
Yeah, so this is always a question that gets highly debated, because the concern is that if I were to evaluate your sleep, put an EEG on, I can look at the squiggles of the brain, and I see that it looks the same as someone who's sleeping naturally without medication intervention. Is that actually representing that same quality or function of sleep. And so what I can say is that it continues to be debated, but based on the animal studies that have been done, there does give a suggestion that it may actually provide the same degree of benefit. Now, with that stated, depending on the sleep aid, it sometimes is changing how we're cycling, and that changing in how we're cycling may not be beneficial or may not be the type of pattern that we're really aiming for.
Gosh, I mean, this is such a big topic because it is the cornerstone, like I started out with. I mean, diet, exercise, all the other things that you're doing mean nothing if you're not getting good quality sleep. And you spend almost half of your hours asleep. And it's the people like you and me who are high functioning, go-getters, type A personalities that think that we don't need to sleep that are going to be suffering the most, and then the long-term side effects. Before we go, I can't believe we're already out of time. What takeaways would you like to give the listener that we haven't covered?
Sure. So first thing I would say that if you're experiencing sleep difficulties, by being able to try and understand what you're going through, try just even jotting it down. A lot of people will run and get the things like the Oura Ring or one of the wearables. And it's not that that's a bad thing to do. However, it is not you. Right? You need to be able to write down what it is that you're experiencing. Those can be a great complement to it to either verify or add on to that information. But you having that knowledge of what are the specific challenges, you then can better partner with your clinician to understand what are the solutions that are right for you. Is there testing that is necessary for you? Do you have a specific condition that does require medication, like conditions like narcolepsy or idiopathic hypersomnia? Or do you need other types of interventions like a CPAP or a dental device or medication that may help with sleep disorder breathing or obstructive sleep apnea? Don't accept a lesser version of yourself by either choosing less sleep because you think you can get away with less sleep. You're not getting away with it. You're just allowing yourself to live a lesser version of who you are. But also, if you're experiencing sleep difficulties, don't just think that it's normal. It might be common, but it's not normal.
Especially as we age. You know, I'm turning 50 next week, and there's not a fiber in my body that says I should be worse off, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, than I was when I was 20. I feel better than ever. And
Absolutely.
that goes for sleep as well. I mean, you should be able to sleep into your hundreds if that's how long you live. And you will live that long if you are sleeping properly, right? So it just really affects all of the disease profiles and everything else. And we're in this world where we have so many things coming at us that we have to combat: the toxins, the microplastics, the food supply, all of those things. We have to prioritize our sleep. So Dr. Anna Marie, can you please tell people where they can find you?
You can find me at Damn Good Sleep. Stands for Dr. Anne Marie Morse. So it's DAMM. That's right. I put the damn in Damn Good Sleep. You can find me there both on my website, damngoodsleep.com. It also is my social media handle. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, you name the type of social, and you'll probably find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This is such an important topic, and I just loved our conversation.
Thank you.
Gosh, as you know, sleep is everything, right? And so we need to focus on what we can do. We can do some supplements. We can do our diet. We can do our walking, all of those things. I want to just touch on a few of my favorite supplements that I will not do without. And that is, number one, my accelerated cellular detox powder. A hack that I have found is I mix the accelerated cellular detox powder with the magnesium breakthrough tart cherry. Funny that she mentioned that. And that combination puts me right to sleep. Because when you're sleeping, your body clears the endotoxins, the inflammatory debris, the estrogens, the ammonia, chemicals, metals, all the things. And it can help with the middle of the night waking, the hot flashes, the overheating, your heart racing, the anxiety, and your liver congestion. Your liver is what could be waking you up between 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning. And so I mix those two together. The tart cherry is known to help with sleep. It calms that nighttime inflammation. It helps regulate the circadian rhythm, improve REM sleep and deep sleep. But then the magnesium has also been shown to help with anxiety, muscle tension, those cramping in the legs, the racing thoughts. It just relaxes. I never take magnesium during the day. That's personally what I do. I like to take it at night. But I also use the accelerated liver care because these toxins in your liver are stirring things up, right? When the liver's congested, inflamed, or overwhelmed, it triggers that nighttime waking. The blood sugar drops, the cortisol spikes, overheating, the vivid dreams, and the restless sleep. The accelerated liver care supports phase 1, 2, and 3 of the detoxification, improves your fat metabolism and your estrogen, getting that estrogen out of the body, and helps with the bile flow to really be that detergent to get those toxins out. So those are my game changers for my sleep, and my Aura Ring will tell you they're working. So just wanted to mention those before we go. But like I said, diet, supplements, everything else doesn't matter if you're not sleeping. And I know that's easier said than done. I also like to look at the sun when I wake up. I try to delay my caffeine intake. I cut my caffeine intake afternoon. I don't have any more. I walk after my meals, especially after my last meal, and it's just 10 minutes down the street. Not a big deal. And those things have been game changers. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you got some tools and inspiration to take the next steps. You can head to SaraBantaHealth.com for my health articles and more. Join my free group coaching on Telegram, and you can use the coupon code podcast10 on your first order. Share this with a friend. I know you know people that aren't sleeping, whether it's your sister, your niece, your dad, like me. These little tips are really, really important. You can find all of my podcasts, including this, on Apple, YouTube, E360, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Roku, and over 100 different platforms. And remember, I'm live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So join me next time for more ways to unlock your health potential.